No.
You gotta
Um,
go with somebody.
no,
They should
Barack
have gone with
Obama's
Bobby
gay.
Kennedy. They should have gone with Bobby Kennedy, but
Bobby
obviously the
Kennedy. No, he's
Democrats
doing
need to say
third party.
he is, yeah. But
He
originally he was
needs to
running as a
cough.
Democrat. So
Bobby Kennedy. He needs to cough. He's like talking like that. That's mean. He probably has
yeah,
some
it's
like
like
throat
it's
cancer
not.
or
It's not.
something.
It's not.
No, I
He's
like
not
him.
got throat. He's got a very rare throat condition.
I
So
wouldn't
he's
vote
like
for him,
he
but I
listens
like him.
to. If you, I really like him as well. If he was, he's gonna have to run as a Republican if he wants to be the president because the
No, if he gets
Democrats
above
are so
10% in the polls, he's gonna die. They're not gonna let him live. He's a Kennedy.
well, it happened to his dad. It didn't
Those,
happen to his uncle
those
in
guys
the
are
80s. My
well, yes,
uncle
he
kind
did get about he just killed a woman in a car. He's drowned her in a
Ted
river.
Kennedy, yeah, he was drunk driving. He was drunk driving.
No,
He
I
accidentally
forgot the hooker in the back of my
ran,
car was in there
ran into a
when I
lake,
drove it
and
off a
then he was
bridge and
like,
swam
I'm
out.
just gonna leave this here." Yeah, I was like, he was not as noble as his other three brothers.
I
So
had no
his
idea
oldest
she
brother.
was in there. Oh
I
God.
was like, yeah. So obviously you got Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy Jr. is a war hero, died in a plane crash
Oh
in
yep,
World War II.
yep, remember him.
Not plane crash, the engine just exploded. And then you got JFK, who's obviously so JFK. I don't know
He
what you
did
think of it.
well.
He's one of my top presidents of all time.
I like him
And then you
too.
got
Too bad the
the,
Illuminati killed him.
the Illuminati,
No,
CIA,
it wasn't the.
definitely.
It was I see the JFK that conspiracy theory. I believe the official story, but if it came out the CIA did it, it wouldn't shock me at all.
I don't believe the official story one bit. I think if I
Fair
ever
enough.
receive, no,
Go on
I don't
YouTube,
believe any.
look up Trevor Moore kitty history.
Okay,
It's
I'll
a
take a look into
song
it.
like I don't
Yeah.
know if you heard Trevor Moore, Whitest Kids You Know. It's a song he did where basically it's like it's about how like cat history is the same as humans, and he goes into conspiracy theory that links the JFK assassination with 9/11. It's hilarious.
I think there is a link because the CIA was involved in both.
Yeah, and apparently
When
because LBJ's wife, her father was like the CEO of like Bell Huey or something like that, the helicopter
yeah,
defense contractor, and so he killed him, became president, sold him the contracts, and then and George H.W. Bush, according to the song, was involved in that. He got promoted to essentially vice president by these people and made a bunch of deals with the Saudis to basically attack Iraq during the first Gulf War, but they weren't able to get Saddam kicked out, so they threw him out. Got the other George Bush in there, and there's what's the commission called? The Warren Commission or something like that. Yep,
yeah.
where they figured out like the only way to start a new war was to have a new Pearl Harbor. This is like a year before 9/11, and then 9/11 happens, and then yeah, Saddam gets
Okay,
kicked out. I
very
explained that
interesting.
terribly, but go watch the song.
I'll take a look into that. But
What's
it's
your
like
favorite conspiracy theory?
the JFK. So the Warren Commission, they concluded they went
Oh, that
out
was
right from the
something else.
very
Now
start.
I don't know what commission it is. It was some commission.
The Warren Commission was the
That
JFK
was Jack.
commission.
Yeah, different
It was named
commission.
after L. Warren, who was the head of the commission. It was
Yep.
actually headed by Alan Dulles, who was the CIA director that JFK fired after the Bay of Pigs invasion, which he had no business being on that
No,
commission. So obviously he had conflicting interests. I also believe that he's the one who gave the order to have him killed. So it was like he really shouldn't have been
really.
on that commission.
No
So when you
LBJ.
actually
No.
LBJ. I don't know. I don't think LBJ was involved in it. I know a lot of people do think that. I think LBJ knew who did it
Hmm.
and was like, not gonna say anything because I could easily go the same way. I think Richard Nixon also knew
Yeah, no,
exactly who
yeah.
did it.
When he got drunk, it's like the
He
same
didn't know
people who
who
got
did
JFK
it.
got me, but a bullet would have been too obvious.
Yeah, yeah,
I think he said that to Reagan or something.
yeah. I think he did say that to Reagan. And he also said in the press conference, "Oh, you're going to do the same thing to me you did to John." Like he said, "Do we want another Bay of Pigs?"
No, and Watergate wasn't even his idea. Like when he found out about it, there was a recording of him saying, "Whose dumbass idea was that?"
Yeah, so like, I think Nixon's one of the most misunderstood presidents of
Oh,
all time. I think he was
absolutely,
actually a
yeah.
lot better. I think he was a good president. Actually,
Oh
he
yeah,
reduced he pulled troops out of Vietnam, which
yep.
I think LBJ is probably one of the. We're going back to the discussion earlier. He's one of the worst presidents of
Oh yeah.
all
Oh
time.
God, yes. Horrible
Yeah, it's like
racist too.
yeah, of course he was. It's like I'll have
He's.
those. I'm not gonna say the exact quote, but it's like, I'll have
I'll
those
have
any
those. You know what's voting Democrat the
voting
next
Democrat
100
for the next
years.
100 years. It's
Yep.
like yeah. But back to the JFK
Great
assassination. It's like
Society
I
program.
believe
Fuck
that
that guy.
so I've been. Have you ever been to Daily Plaza? Dealey
No.
Plaza. Okay, so I've been there. So I've been in the room where Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly was. He wasn't, but he was actually on the second floor eating his lunch at the time, according to many witnesses. I've also stood on the grassy knoll, and I've stood. There's a cross. There's multiple crosses, 3 crosses on the road where the bullets supposedly hit. One of them hit the sidewalk. One of them hit Kennedy in the shoulder. According to the official story, the other one hit him in the head. So I've stood on the grassy knoll from where the snipers, according to conspiracy theories, was. It lines up perfectly. It lines up a lot better than the window on the 6th floor of the school book depository.
Yeah.
So if you look at the official story, it says 3 bullets were fired from the 6th floor depository. One of them missed, hit the sidewalk, a piece of the sidewalk chipped up and hit a pedestrian in the eye. He had to go.
Didn't a Secret Service guy get hit too? Or did a Secret Service member get hit too, or is that the Reagan assassination?
I think that was the Reagan assassination.
Oh yeah, that's the Brady. That's Brady Bill. Yeah.
Was what was his name now? Secret Service member was actually the one who ran onto the car. I know his name. I'm gonna be Clint Hill. Clint Hill was his name. Clint Hill ran onto the car when the bullets were fired. But he was actually told to not be on the back of the car, which is very coincidental. So if you look at the actual forensics that happened on that day, so 3 shots were fired. One of them missed, hit the sidewalk, hit the pedestrian in the eye. He needed to go to Park Lane Hospital. The second one supposedly hit Kennedy in the shoulder, and the third one hit him in the head. But what people don't talk about, or a lot of people do talk about, what the Warren Commission doesn't talk about, that the bullet, there was also the governor of Texas, Governor Connolly.
Yep. He was in there.
Hitting the wrist.
Yep.
With a bullet. So they decided to say, well, only 3 shots were fired. How does that make sense? One of them hit the sidewalk, one of them hit Kennedy in the shoulder, one of them hit him in the head. I was like, oh, the bullet which went through his shoulder, Kennedy's shoulder, also went around, hit Connolly in the shoulder too, and then made the trajectory down.
Magic bullet,
wrist,
obviously.
And went through. And they found this bullet, the magic bullet. Yeah, I was like, they found this bullet in pristine condition, and they tested that, the forensic, every single time. As soon as it hits the wrist is a very strong bone.
Yeah,
the bullet's completely shattered. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. No. That's the theory that the Warren Commission went with. So it doesn't make any sense when you look at that.
Well, have you heard the connections between like Jack Ruby, the guy who killed Lee Harvey Oswald, and like the CIA?
FBI, actually.
FBI, yeah,
he was
one of those.
He was a mob informant for the FBI.
Yep.
And there's a lot of interesting stories about Jack Ruby. So
they went up and shot him out of patriotism or some shit. No, they paid him off.
Yeah, so the official story is he supposedly shot him because he didn't want Jackie Kennedy to have to go back to Dallas and listen to the.
He seems like a nice guy. I believe him.
Like, no, actually, he wasn't. And then the CIA visited him when he was in prison, and then gave him some psychiatric drugs, which we now know is LSD.
Yeah.
And then he was
MK Ultra, crazy story.
He couldn't testify, and he died of cancer.
That I didn't hear about. Holy shit!
The forensics itself doesn't make any sense because obviously it's impossible for that bullet to do that much damage.
Yeah.
So there has to have been more than one shooter. There's plenty of forensic evidence to suggest it was more than one shooter, but the Warren Commission completely ignored it because they wanted this one man, Lee Harvey Oswald, who was a patsy, to being the guy who fired the 3 shots and killed it.
Yeah.
And it's possible for it with the gun that he had, which was cost $12.75, which he bought from a sporting goods store, mail-in order.
God, only today.
To Alex Heidel was his pseudonym, which he ordered it to. And going off the laws at the time, if you ordered it to a pseudonym to his mailbox, then he wouldn't have been able to sign for it because his name's Lee Harvey Oswald and he didn't present any ID, so it would have just got sent back in the first place. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
There's a lot of things in that assassination which don't make any sense in the slightest. So obviously it's forensic. So if you start looking at why did they ignore all these witness testimonies? Loads of witness testimonies say that there was a shot from the grassy knoll, multiple shots from the grassy knoll. Also, the forensics, when JFK was his body was examined, they found a clear entrance wound in his throat. And they decided, and a bunch of CIA operatives went there and said, no, the doctors aren't allowed to carry out this autopsy. We're going to do it. And they kept, and all of the doctors agreed, yeah, that is an entrance wound in his throat. So it's like there was definitely, according to all of
that I did not know about.
Yeah, there was an entrance wound in his throat and in his skull as well.
Yep,
and
if you look
at the Zapruder film as well,
yep,
there's a clear video Kennedy's head goes back into the left when he's assassinated, and they tried to gaslight us. The Warren Commission did. Like, oh, it could actually happen when that shot comes from the front. Comes from behind. Actually, it's like, how many times that the shot goes back into the left? So according to physics, the bullet from the gun must have come from the front because it's going to hit him in the head, and then it's going to go back like that.
Yeah, whips it back.
Oh, but the blood is actually going forward. Therefore, it must mean the shot came from behind. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Because if you shoot someone, I've never shot anybody, obviously, but
I hope
like,
not.
I've seen videos.
Well,
I've seen videos.
Guns.
It just explodes. It goes everywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, so that doesn't make any sense. So they just gaslight the public into believing that. And I was like, so if all of the forensics suggest that the Warren Commission is wrong, why did they lie? Why did they not listen to all these witness testimonies? There's also this witness testimony. There was three people who worked in the school book depository who said they swore that at 12 o'clock they saw Lee Harvey Oswald on the third or the fourth floors, I can't remember which one it was, eating his lunch. And then after Kennedy was shot, they saw him downstairs on the second floor. It's like they proved it's impossible for Lee Harvey Oswald to have fired 3 shots, hid the rifle, ran down the stairs, the fire escape, and got to the second floor and be putting a nickel into the vending machine to buy a Coke. And also, even let's say he could do that. He's not an athlete.
No.
He would have been massively out of breath. It was like he looks perfectly fine. So it's like I think the Warren Commission interviewed this woman. I can't remember what her name was, and the recording of it completely disappeared. But an independent journalist tracks her down. She lived in San Francisco in the 2000s. Interviewed her again, and was like, "Yeah, the Warren Commission." Like they said, "Yeah, we interviewed her, but she was the story didn't add up." So, and then the recording was disposed of.
Yeah. So when I saw this thing where this former CIA agent gave like a recorded deathbed confession to his son that like he was involved in it or something. Why do you think they did it though?
Well, I think they did it because Kennedy was massively opposed to a war in Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, have you heard of Operation Northwoods?
Yes, I have heard of.
Yeah, that is where he like where he completely put his foot down on it when they were planning to murder American citizens.
We call ourselves a human race.
That's a terrifying story. That's
why
I think Curtis LeMay had something to do with it.
It's possible, yeah.
That crazy son of a bitch.
There's a bunch of reasons why they did it. First of all, you have to go back. Is like if the Warren Commission lied, why did they lie in the first place? Well, I believe it's because the person who was really the head of that, not Earl Warren, Alan Dulles, was in charge of the investigation. He's the one who gave the order to have him killed. Is why I believe that. So he was on the commission, first of all. So he was the head of the CIA under Eisenhower. And then Kennedy decided to keep him on in his first year. Oof. And then he had the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Yep.
And which I'm sure you know all about. But the Bay of Pigs invasion, basically, they had a bunch of Cuban rebels who said, we're going to overthrow the Cuban government.
Went very well, I heard.
And he said that it's going to be a foolproof plan. It's going to be easy. You won't need to send in the U.S. military. And Kennedy said, I will not send in U.S. troops, U.S. Navy, or U.S. Air Force, no matter what. It doesn't matter what happens. I am not sending
World War III.
Yeah. So Alan Dulles said, yeah, it's fine. But he truly believed that he knew it was going to go really bad. At the 11th hour, Kennedy would have to send in U.S. assistance, military assistance, but he refused to. But in public, Kennedy said, yeah, I take full blame for this. But in reality, it was Alan Dulles lying to him. CIA lying to him. So you have that famous quote, as Kennedy said, I will shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. He immediately fired Alan Dulles. But Alan Dulles, he stuck around. He was like, a lot of people in the CIA still really respected him and still listened to him and still treated him like a leader. So just because Kennedy fired him and he wasn't on the payroll anymore didn't mean he lost his power.
What do you think about the moon landing conspiracy theories?
I will shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. You think the CIA is going to just take that lightly?
No, God, no.
Probably not. So that's one of them. The other one was he wanted peace after the Cuban Missile Crisis was the other one, because he was like, all his military advisors were saying, we need to take military action. We need to go in there and take these missiles down by force. And Kennedy was saying, no, we're not doing that, because it's going to lead to a nuclear war. All his military advisors, they were so desperate.
Yeah, and that's Curtis LeMay. The guy's out of his mind.
Yes. Okay, so
it bombs away LeMay.
Yeah, of course. Like, but they wanted any excuse to start a war with Cuba, so they were actually really excited about this. It's we can get a war with Cuba out of this because the war is very, very profitable.
Oh,
Obviously,
absolutely.
so even though it's going to destroy half of the human race, so Kennedy was like, "No, we're dealing with this diplomatically." So he, against his military advisor's will, he sent his brother over to somewhere in Eastern Europe, it wasn't Russia, to meet with Khrushchev and discuss this and diplomatically say, "Okay, we're going to remove the blockade which they put in place from Cuba.
Take missiles out of
We will
Turkey.
remove missiles from Turkey that we have pointing at Moscow. In return, you will remove the missiles from Cuba." And then he said, "Yeah, okay." So it was over. Red October was finished. And the CIA really didn't like that because they felt as though he was a traitor for doing so and he was being weak. And then after that, Kennedy and Khrushchev were actually grew very close. And they were saying, like,
That's where the red phone came. Well, red phone didn't really exist. Yeah.
they put the phone, the direct line from the White
It
House.
wasn't a red phone, but like it's a direct line.
Yeah. So after that, they grew talking about let's just we have to just coexist in this world. Like we have to just accept the facts that we're going to be capitalist and you're going to be communist.
Yeah.
And let's just be at peace with it. And like no need to fight over it. So it's like let's just work together. And Kennedy actually suggested, it's like, we've got this plan. We want to send a man to the moon by 1969, end of 1969. Why don't we just work together on that? Because if you have the US and the Russians, it's like we'll get there way before 1969 working on it because we're the two most intelligent scientists.
And they got to space first.
In the world. I was like, yeah, they were working towards that, and the CIA and they hated it. They thought it was like Kennedy's a traitor because he's compromising with the communists. And Fidel Castro actually said on November 21st, 1963, that he thinks because they're working towards peace, Kennedy will go down as the greatest American president since Lincoln. And the day after he was assassinated, there was also two other assassination plots which he was warned about. One was in Chicago, so it was the Army versus Navy game at Soldier Field, which Kennedy was always in attendance for. He went, and there was this assassination plot which he was warned about. Somebody actually called Lee. He didn't give his second name. Somebody called Lee phoned in and said, "There's going to be an assassination plot." He gave the names. Thomas Arthur Val, I think he was called, was the supposed assassin. He was very, very much like Lee Harvey.
Why is it always three names with the presidential assassination?
I was thinking
you notice
exactly that. It was
John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, exactly. There was Thomas Arthur Val was he was a military man who with Soviet ties. He worked for the CIA. And Lee Harvey Oswald, that's a fact. He works for the CIA.
Yep. That is weird ties to Cuba and Soviet Union too.
Yeah.
Probably some kind of spy.
So they somebody called Lee called him up, warned him off it. So they withdrew the plot. Kennedy didn't actually go to Chicago, but he was in attendance the other 2 years that he was president for the Army versus Navy game. Obviously, he was in the Navy himself, so he was a Navy man. Roger Staubach, got the jersey down over there. Like he was Kennedy's favorite player.
Didn't know that.
And then there was one in Tampa as well. The one in Tampa didn't go ahead, but it was all planned, and they had they found schematics of it. It was supposed to be at this sharp turn, like Elm Street is in Dallas, where the motorcade, big stretch limousine, has to slow down and give him time to shoot, basically.
Yeah. The one kind of thing, like the one, my own caveat with those is like, wasn't the decision to not have like the car, like the whatever the cover on the car is, kind of a last minute thing. So it kind of hinges on that, doesn't it?
Head of security also on that day was actually told that he was overdue for a vacation. It was mandatory that he had to take a vacation on the weekend, which not the weekend, on the week that Kennedy was assassinated. So they would say, you're not allowed to work, you have to take a vacation, which is very interesting as well. You could say, oh, it's just a coincidence. I think with everything else that's gone on, I think it's very unlikely that was a coincidence.
Yeah.
So there's so much about the Kennedy assassination which points to the CIA doing that. And when you open that can of worms, what else have they done?